everyone. Welcome to another episode of Simply Nerding. I'm your host, Steven. I'm joined today by the usual panel, and today we are talking about video game memories, because we have a lot, and they're juicy and awesome. So, we're going to get right into it. Who wants to share their first story?
Maybe you should
start with me. I should start? Okay, I will start. Why not?
Why not?
Okay. So, we shared this story not too long ago. Okay, it was a long time ago. 3 years ago. But we need to do a take two because there's some missed details about the story. So, to set this up, we're all playing Metroid Fusion for the first time. I'm sitting there playing. We've got Anthony, David, and Anthony's older brother, Johnny. They were all sitting there watching me play. And I was at the part where you drop in front of the SAX with... But for me, was no warning since I had the audio turned off. But usually you'll have an audio cue, telling you an SCX is nearby. But of course I didn't know because the volume was off. And you drop.
I still can't remember why we had the sound off.
I don't either. We had to be quiet for something, but we had the sound off. So I dropped down in front of her. I freak out and I'm like, "What do I do? What do I do?" And I quickly pause the game, jump out of my chair, and I'm like sitting there hyperventilating and screaming, "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" And then I hear shoot her the ice missiles. So I unpaused it. Shot her with an ice missile. She froze for literally a half a second, came back to life and shot me with her plasma beam, lost the energy tank of life, paused it again, freaked out some more. I was like, that didn't work. What do I do? What do I do? And everyone's like, well, run, just run. So I unpaused the game, blast her with like 10 to 15 ice missiles, and it does nothing because she, again, just half a second, no matter how many missiles you shoot at her. So I just blast 15 and 10 missiles. I start running. And she blasts me again. I jump over whatever the obstacles were, turn around. Whenever she blasts at me, I turn around and blast her with like 10 or 15 ice missiles. And then I finally found a corner where I would be safe. I went into Morph Ball. I went as far left on the screen as you could because we were running from right to left. So I went into Morph Ball. I just went right against the wall. And I just like threw up a prayer. I was like, please don't see me. And the SAX just walked in. Looked around for a second, turned around and walked out the door. But I stayed in the Morph Ball in the corner for like a solid 2 minutes before I dared to get up again or do anything. And that was my like my number one gaming memory. I'm sure Anthony and David can probably fill you in with more details that I missed.
Yeah, it was a very fun moment for all of us, but it was also terrifying. I remember John, my older brother, David, who was also one of my older brothers, just the next up, and then myself. We all screamed at the top of our lungs along with Steven when we saw what he dropped down in front of, and it was really funny. It was hard to convince Steven to unpause the game and get back to playing. And then the other thing I remember to add to it is a memory of how at one point he was standing at the entrance to a doorway and the SAX was on the other side, and you couldn't see it yet, but it had opened the door, and he was just pumping it with missiles while screaming like a banshee. And it had to have been, like he said, tons of missiles, even though they were all just freezing her for half a second each. But
I don't even say that. They didn't even do that. I swear, there was no effect. If you shot 1 versus 10, it did the same thing. It was still a half a second.
Well, I mean, it just restarted the timer, but
it did, yeah. Barely.
Here's a question.
What timer? Yeah.
So do you guys feel like the SAX is scarier than an E.M.M.I? Or like, where would you scale them, I guess?
Ooh.
I mean,
a good question. I think the SAX was scarier to me.
I feel like also younger at the time. Sorry.
Because you had no idea where the SAX could be. That thing could be anywhere, whereas the E.M.M.Is are only in certain locations.
That's a good point. Good point, Steven. The E.M.M.Is.
I have good points every now and then.
Sorry, go ahead.
The E.M.M.Is are scripted, right? You go in the area and you know what's going to happen. So it is scarier to not know when it's coming, right? With the SAX. And also, we were a lot younger and it was easier to be.
That is fair too. That's a fair point.
Easier to be scared by stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the SAX thing, it's scarier on a first playthrough because I would call it actually more scripted than the E.M.M.Is. It's just that you didn't enter an area that's clearly signposted you were going to be bumping into one, into the SAX. So for a first time playthrough, yes, very terrifying.
I say one more thing? You know, my favorite part of this memory is I'm pretty sure I knew it was coming, and I wasn't saying anything because I wanted to see Steven's reaction.
Dirtbag.
I remember standing there.
I'm glad you didn't say anything. It turned into a great gaming memory. So thank you for not saying anything, David.
Yeah, I was sitting there like I was just like trying to keep my mouth closed. I was so excited to see what happened.
I swear I remember you screaming.
He was not disappointed.
I don't know.
Because I was screaming so loud. He was more scared of me than.
I might have been screaming in surprise because of how loud Steven was screaming. So.
All right. Well, I might have
story number one.
It's a good one. You know, going with that, and we've shared this too, but like going with how scary the SAX was, it gave a good job of, because it is all scripted, but it gave a good job of not letting you know that, right? Like thinking it's smarter, thinking it's pretty smart. And there's this one room you go in, and you have to like drop under the floor in Morph Ball, and you're rolling under there, and suddenly the SAX walks in and like slowly walks across the floor that you're like an inch away from her. And I was doing some bravado. I'm pretty sure that Anthony and others were watching again while I played.
Yep.
So I was bombing the floor. I was bombing the floor right under. I was like, oh yeah, you can't find me. And as you bomb, it, you know, in Metroid games, it reveals hidden blocks, right? I was blowing up the floor, and I could see it was revealing that the floor could be destroyed with a power bomb. But I was like, yeah, going up the floor, she's not going to find me down here. And suddenly she stops in her tracks after one of my explosions that was a little close. And she goes into Morph Ball and puts a power bomb.
Too smart.
Yeah. It turns out it's scripted. She's supposed to do the power bomb because it's like a dead end room, you know. And
oh yeah, that's right.
anyway, I had no idea. I was like, oh no. She knows I'm here. And it led to, I'm pretty sure I didn't get away from that chase.
No.
And I remember thinking it's just your just desserts for being so cocky. No.
Yeah, I know. Wasn't there another time, Anthony, where like there's a room that's a dead end and you have to hide behind a wall, and I like
and you sat up on top and kept on looking at her, and eventually she finally decided to shoot at you.
Yeah. I was doing it to get reactions. I was like, oh look, Anthony, I'm up on the wall, she might see me.
I remember being very grumpy at you. I was like, this is stupid. She stood there for like a very long time, and then all of a sudden, just it was almost like one of those quick draw, you know, moments, like in an old western. All of a sudden, she just pulls out and starts shooting.
Yeah, it backfired every time I did that stuff, but it was still good memories.
While we're on the subject of Metroid Fusion, and I guess we need to make sure we cover some other memories too. This is probably one that I think I've definitely shared this memory in earlier videos, but for those of you who've joined later or don't remember, I think this still counts as a really fun memory. So I grew up actually hating the Metroid franchise. I was terrified of it as a kid. The idea of Metroids were offensive to me. You know, I thought what they did is they latched onto your head and they sucked out your literal brains, not your actually just the energy. And so I remember what, David?
It doesn't help, Anthony, that it looks like there's brains inside the Metroids.
Yeah.
Well, and also, that was one of John's favorite things to do, was to pretend that
he was a Metroid sucking out my brains.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd come over to me and he'd wave his arms over my head in a Metroid-like motion. You know, imagine that how you will. It's hard to describe. And he'd say galump, galump, galump. That was his sound effect for it sucking out my brains. And
Anthony would get really mad.
Insta trigger me. I would scream and rage and that's anyway. That was. So I did not like Metroid growing up, and I still remember having nightmares of. I remember one, I was playing as Samus, and she was old and weak, and she was underwater, and the mother brain was there beating her up, and I was very stressed. And anyway, so be that all the backdrop of my original dislike for this series, The main thing though is I was terrified of the Metroids and Mother Brain. Those were my big things. And so when I learned that Metroid Fusion was supposed to take place after a point in the story where there wasn't any more Mother Brain or Metroids, I was like, okay, well, I know my brothers are super into this game, this series, and so I'm kind of interested to give it a try now. Maybe it won't be as scary because there's no Metroids or Mother Brain. And ironically, yeah, by the point I realized that it was far scarier than any of the previous Metroid games, I was having too much fun to care anymore. So that was my story for how I got into Metroid. I hated it because it was scary to me, and then I got into it because I played the scariest game in the series. So, so there you go. And now I'm a super fan.
It's funny because Metroid, I've always had like a fascination. Like, I think the darker themes were like interested me. I was like, oh, this is serious. This is scary. And so that was a draw for me to the series. And I had a hard time not resenting Anthony's fear of the game. I was like, Mom doesn't let us play it because Anthony's too scared. I remember like watching John play it, and he was fighting Mother Brain, and I was like trying to block the screen, like, no, don't look, Anthony, don't look at what we're playing.
I remember.
I think I remember that.
The way I remember it, you and John and Steven were in the basement, and you were John was playing. You all were watching with rapt attention, and I was standing outside the door with a horrified fascination of, I want to see what they're doing. No, I don't. I definitely don't want to see. And anyway, I didn't end up going to look.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. If you like this content, please be sure to subscribe, like, and ring that notification bell so you can hear more of our ranting about more of our gaming memories in the future, perhaps, as we create more, because there's always new games coming out and always new experiences to go through. So stay tuned on that. And what else am I going to say? I think it's it.
We'd love to hear your memorable moments.
That's what I wanted to say. In the comments down below. Please do. We'd love to hear it. Oh, also, we have started a Discord community of sorts. Be sure to hop on over there and share your experiences there with us as well. We'd love to hear them.
And just so that it felt authentic, Steven said a Discord community of sorts, but because we wanted it to be as authentic as possible, we actually did create it on Discord.
Yes. That is a true story.
The of sorts part can be taken off. It
can be taken off. That's
actually a real Discord server, so come join.
I like my joke.
It was funny.
All right. Oh yeah, and be sure to buy some merch if you want to. We also opened a merch store. You can see it in the description below. And until next time, guys, keep it nerdy.
Yeah.